you maybe at the end, towards the end of the lesson, maybe. But those that have got questions should just put in the chat.
Chat box. Okay, perfect. Not a problem. Okay, we're live on YouTube, so you can start your screen sharing just on the main page, just so that there's something for them to look at so long. And then I'm sending you both the link now, and then I'm going to unmute myself, well, mute myself, and then you can start at exactly 4 o'clock.
All right. Thanks, Mel.
Perfect. I need to ask something or anything. I am still here. Okay.
All right. No problem.
Perfect.
Sorry, Mel, you gonna check the chats and that, or do you want me to check that?
We can both do it. I honestly don't mind.
All right, thank you. But you let
Perfect.
them into the room.
I've let them in already.
All right. Thanks.
Perfect.
Hi guys. Welcome back to our second lesson. I hope you're well, and I would like to thank some of the guys that answered the online activity that I sent out yesterday, and I hope maybe we will have enough time to talk about problems that you had from that activity. But we need to move on so long. All right, so today we're going to be dealing with decision functions, right? And as you all know that functions are in Excel. So today's discussion is going to be about functions, decision functions in Excel, right? What I prefer you to do is, like I said yesterday, you need a small book where you'll be writing. Actually, as the lesson goes on, you also need to be writing your questions that you might want to ask me during, or maybe towards the end of the lesson. And please also keep a track of what's going on so that I can know how to assist you. Right. So what I'm just going to do now, I'm going to cut the video so that we can really concentrate. All right. All right. So first, this is what we need to achieve at the end of the lesson. We need to understand some of the decision functions. And just for today, we're going to concentrate on the count if, the sum if, the sum if, and the simple if. Why am I calling it the simple if? Is because as we go deeper into the if function, you realize that there is more to it. But for today, we're just going to concentrate on a simple if function. And maybe for the lesson, for tomorrow's lesson, that's when we're going to look deeper into the lesson. But today, we just need to understand. I know you're familiar with the count if from grade 10, and you should be familiar with the sum if from last term's work. All right. Now, just as a form of revision, I'll just go to the charts there. Just as a form of revision, can you just maybe enter quickly the functions that you remember? Anyone? Quickly, the functions that you remember. So far, I haven't seen anyone. Oh yes, there's one. Yes, Lubelihle, run between. Thank you very much. Yes, run between. What else? What else? Lubelihle says run between. Yes, we did run between last term. All right. Maybe it seems it's taking longer for us to figure out the functions, but or maybe the chart function is not working on your side. But anyway, what is important is every time when you are dealing with functions, you need to sort of like group them. How do you group them? Remember, functions work on a specific data, right? So you group these functions according to what they are meant to be used for. For example, we have let me just close the chat. For example, we've got number functions, right? Number functions such as sum, average, count, max, or mean, right? These functions only work on numbers. So if you try to apply them on something that is not numbered, it's going to give you an error message. And you also need to be aware of the different error messages that you get from Excel when you make a mistake, right? Another group of functions is the ones that deals with dates and time, right? Which ones are these? Today, now, date, month. There are quite many. There is also day function, right? But the most common ones that we're going to use during the course of our grade 11 studies is the function today and the function now, right? And you should be able to tell the difference between the today and the now function, right? Then these ones, we call them text functions. They actually work. Remember, we said number functions work on number data. These ones actually work on text data. But for these particular functions, they will come right at the end of grade 11, but mostly you're going to deal with them in grade 12. But it's always wise to have a look at them well in advance. It's actually advisable. Then we have decision functions, the ones that we really want to talk about today, right? But these are not all the decision functions that are there, but for our level and for today and tomorrow's lessons, we're just gonna look at the count if, the sum if, as well as the if, right? And then tomorrow we're gonna continue with the if. All right. So what do decision functions do, right? Certain functions in Excel perform calculations according to a condition. So what you would have is a specific criteria or condition in Excel. These functions, the count if, the sum, and the if, will give you an answer or a feedback based on the criteria or condition that you would have set, right? So that's why we loosely translate them to decision functions, because they make a decision for you based on what information you would have fed in the function. All right. So we're just going to start off right away with the count if, right? I know most of you are familiar with the count if. It's pretty easy because you have done it for a while. Now, most of us tend to think that Excel is the most difficult part of our practical. Why? Because we don't give it enough practice. Actually, it is the most interesting one, right? Actually, I believe with Excel, there are so many things that you can do there. They can improve your life, right? The count, if you find it easy, why? Because you've done it so many times for the past year from grade 10, right? What does it do? It counts the number of cells in a range that meets a certain criteria, all right? Now, the formula that you actually type, does anyone know what name we give to the formula that you actually type in the in Excel? What name do we give to the actual thing that you type in Excel? Anyone? Anyone on the chat there? Anyone who might know what name you give? All right, maybe for the purposes of time, because yesterday we had an issue with time. We'll move on so long. Or maybe I see one chat there. Helen says a function, right? The function is part of the the whole thing. Rebellion says the formula. Well, the formula involves a calculation, but the way that I'm actually looking for her is a syntax, or it's called a function string, right? Like for count if, you've got count if, right? Open brackets, range, where you specify the range of where your data set is, right? The next, you have got the criteria. What do you want the function to count, right? Based on that range, what exactly do you want the function to count? Now, your criteria can take many forms, preferably a number, right? You can count a specific number in a range. You can also count specific text in a range, right? These yellow shaded parts in a function, we call them arguments, right? That is very important for you to understand. Each function has got its own set of arguments, right? Like in this case, the count if function has got two arguments. That is the range, the criteria, and the criteria forms different formats. The number, it can be a number, it can be text. And remember, when it's text, it has to be placed in double quotes. You're going to see that when we actually do an example, right? Then the criteria can also be a cell address. All right, now move on to our our Excel worksheet and see how the count if function works. Right, at this moment, I'm sure you're quite happy because most of you should understand how it works. All right, so we have a list here, a couple of names. Maybe we can call them learners. in a particular class, right? And in different grades, right? Suppose you only want to know how many grade 10s are available in this data set. So you're going to type your count if syntax, because you know the function that does that is the count if. So equals count if, and you need to be careful how you spell your count if, right? Do you see that it gives you a suggestion there? Maybe if I can just zoom that a little. It gives you a suggestion of now specify the range. So here we want to only count grade 10s. We're going to highlight, right? Then we go to the next argument. Remember, your argument is also, your arguments are separated by either a semicolon or a comma. In this case, on my computer, is a semicolon. You need to be careful, because when you use the wrong separator, it will give you a problem, right? So since here we are counting grade 10s, so we are going to specify 10 here. 10 is a number, it doesn't need to be in quotes. But if it was 10, the actual word TEN, would have placed that in quotes. You will see that as we move on. All right. So there we have the answer that we get is what? 3, because there are only 3 grade 10s in that data set. If I can just zoom in, as you can see, there is our function there, right? The range as well as the criteria that we want to count. Now you can continue and do this for grade 11, grade 12. Again, you can actually copy this function down. But then when you're copying the function down, there's one simple thing that you need to remember. What happens when you copy a function down? Let me just check on my chart what I have here. All right, what is it that you need to do when you copy down a function? The most important thing that you have to do, so that when you copy down your function, it works correctly. Anyone? All right, no one is yet. But anyway, when you copy down, look at what happens when you copy down, right? Do you see that it counts 2 grade 11s? Well, by chance it does, and there are 2 grade 11s. But if you check, it says 1 grade 12, but we've got 2 grade 12s there. Why is it like that? Now, our function is C2 to C8 there, but when you check there, it now says C3 to C9. If you click in there, you can actually see that the range is now totally wrong. And again, we need to be counting grade 11s, not grade 10s, right? So those are some of the things that you should check. So for you to make sure that your formula works correctly, you can actually make this absolute. What does absolute do? It fixes a set of cells so that they don't change when you copy down a formula. All right. Yes, I can see Helen there says absolute by using F4. That's correct. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to absolute this range. So you just highlight it. Then on your keyboard, you press F4. But if you're using a laptop, make sure you press the Fn and F4 key. Do you see what happens there? All right, so now if we copy down, the range is still correct, but then we now need to change our criteria. There it's supposed to be 11, and there it's supposed to be 12. All right, so if you go and check the formula now, our range, even if you check there, our range is still C2 to C8. You go to the next, still the same, nothing changes, because we have actually used absolute cell reference, right? Andile is asking, don't you highlight and then Control C to copy? Right. If you do the same, the cells will still change, right? But when we, for instance, when we do this, Andile, it's called autofill. It actually makes you work smarter and faster. All right. So it's called absolute cell referencing, like Helene has said there. All right. Now, here our criteria was a number. Now we want our criteria to be text. We want to be counting how many male students are there, how many female students are there. So again, we're just going to go equals count if, please be careful with the spelling, right? Now, automatically we go to the range because we want to count the gender, and the gender is found in B2 to B8, right? And the criteria that we want to count is what? Male. But in this case, it's not male, the complete word. Male is denoted by M. So you're going to type M in quotes. Why is M in quotes? Because M is text. All right. So we're just going to copy. Andile had asked, why don't we say Control C and then paste, right? It does the same thing, but it takes our time. So autofill works perfectly well. But remember, when you autofill, you need to absolute your range, F4 on the keyboard, right? Then you copy going downwards. All right. But remember, our criteria now is supposed to be F for female, right? In our next lesson, we're actually going to look at how you can have different criterias instead of typing. Sorry, here it's supposed to be what? Oh, sorry, here it's M. Just a point of correction, M here, and here it's F for female. In our next lesson, we are actually going to look deeper into this criteria and so forth, so that you see different ways of doing it faster. But for the purposes of today, we're just going to do it so that you get the hang of it. All right. So now going back to our PowerPoint presentation. All right. So that's how the count if works. Now I'm just going to give you just 2 minutes for you to try this one out. Please just scribble it nicely on your book and then you quickly post it on the chat. All right, so your 2 minutes starts now. Please study the spreadsheet carefully there. I'm sure you can see, determine the number of each metals in cells E2 to E4. Right. There's a game that I used to enjoy a lot. It's called How to Be a Millionaire, and there was fastest finger first. Anyone who types the correct functions there, we move on. All right, let's go. We're left with 1 minute 45 seconds. Check the counter there. Anyone? This should be easy because this is grade 10 stuff. Lubelisha is also asking, so when using the autofill option, you always have to use the absolute cell reference. Well, the absolute cell reference, you use it when you don't want the cells that you're copying down to change. Like in that case, we didn't want our range to change. That's why we use an absolute cell. But it's not always that you use an absolute cell. As long as you don't want your range or your cell address to change, you can always continue without the absolute. Anyone on that one there? You can type the answer on the chat. I haven't seen an answer. And the 2 minutes is almost up. Remember, in the exam, you have to time yourself and so that you finish the exam, because usually we have a challenge with people not finishing the exam. Well, this is surprising. Grade 11s count if. Oh, there is Clarissa there. Says count A. We are using count if. Yes, there is Helen there. Count if B2 to B11 is gold. That's for the first one. Yes, that's correct. Thank you very much, Helen. All right, so let's just look into that and confirm what Helen has just typed there. All right, so here is the activity that we've done. So we're going to type equals count if. Right. Clarissa, you had actually said count A. Count A actually does something different. The one that we're using is count if, right? And according to Helinde, it's B2 to B11, right? Yes, that's correct. And what we're looking for is gold, so we're going to type gold in quotes. Remember, it has to be in quotes. Right, there we have it. The answer that we should get is 3, right? So when you want to autofill, again, it's what? F4 on your keyboard so that your range doesn't change. But remember here, you're now looking for silver. So it will be silver there because you want to count how many silver medals are there. And then for bronze, you're going to change to bronze. So that's how many bronze are there, right? Yes, change the criteria to silver, then bronze when copied down. Thank you very much. That's exactly what it's meant to be. How do you absolute Chiamo? How do you absolute on the laptop? Check on your laptop there. There should be a button next to control that says FN. So you press FN and F4 on your function keys at the top there. It should absolute quite nicely. But if you're using a computer, you don't need to do the FN. You just go straight to F4. All right, let's move on. You know, I start enjoying this, then I forget that time is not on our side. Right, so we move on to the sum if now. Right, the sum if deals with total calculations, right? It calculates when there's a specific what condition, all right? So the sum if, the name of the function is sum if, and the arguments in a sum if are 3, namely the range, the criteria. The criteria can be a number, can be text, or can be a cell address, right? All along, we've used the number and text. So with the sum if, we're going to try using the cell address, which is quite quicker. All right. Then the sum range, this is where the total, the numbers that you really want to add up. All right. So let's quickly go. If you can just check, the arguments are range, criteria, and sum range. So if we just go back to our spreadsheet again, let's just go back to our spreadsheet. With my spreadsheet, I share. Where is my spreadsheet now? My spreadsheet has disappeared on me. I don't know what's wrong with my spreadsheet. Wow, my spreadsheet has just disappeared on me. Let me try and get back to it. Or maybe let me attend to the questions quickly. All right, let me just use another method to get back to my spreadsheet. Oh, there we go. Now we're back. So here's on the sum if. All right, so here's the situation that we have. Some money was raised by the grade 10s, right? And we want to determine how much exactly was only raised by the grade 10s and how much exactly was only raised by the grade 11s or grade 12s. Similarly, we also want to know how much money was raised by male students and how much money was raised by female students, right? So we're going to start there, equals sum if, that's the name of the function. We want to sum if there's a specific condition, right? There are the 3 arguments, range, criteria, and sum range, right? So the first range is where our criteria is. That is where we have data that has got grade 10s. And in this case is C2 to C8. That's our first range, right? Then next, we need to move to the criteria. Remember, we said the criteria can be a number or can be text. But in this case, we wanted to make a cell address. Our criteria we want to count is 10, and 10 is found in G2, right? So instead of typing 10, so that we don't keep on changing when we go to 11 and go to 12, we're just going to click where our 10 is, and in this case is G2. Sometimes people make a mistake and go and click there, right? But it is always advisable to go click next to where you want to put the amount, right? Next, our next argument is the sum range. Where are the numbers that you want to add if they're in grade 10? In this case, we want to add money for those that are in grade 10, close bracket, enter. So it's, look at the answer now, right? It's the grade 10s raised 52 rand, right? And C2 to C8, that's where our grade 10s are found, right? Then D2 to D8, that's where we want to add. So if you check, those are the two ranges, and usually people confuse which one is which, right? But just to keep in mind, always know that the last range is usually the one where you want to add. It will be easier for you to remember, right? Remember what we said about copying down. Now that we want to copy down, we've got two ranges that we don't want to change. We don't mind if the criteria changes, the G2 changes to G3, G4, because we want the criteria also to change for 11 and for 12. So our D2, we don't mind. But here, our first range, C2, we're going to absolute F4 again on the keyboard. Then our sum range also, we want it to change F4 on the keyboard. So we have something like that. But take note, we did not do anything to G2, right? So if you autofill now, everything should be correct. Look at that. Our first range where the grades are in the total amounts, but this time around the criteria is G3, and in G3 there is 11. All right, this is quite useful because if you decide to change at some point, maybe you want this to be 10, you see automatically it goes to 52 because it's taking whatever is in G3, but in this case we just want it to be 11, right? But now if we go to the female, to the gender now, sum if. All right, so our gender is found here, but we have a problem, right? What is our problem? Our problem is if we say G2 there, it's going to look for the whole word male, but in this case, we don't have the whole word male, we just have M. So in this case, it won't work like what we did up there. So we have to type M for our criteria, right? Our sum range is still the same, right? Where the money is, I always like to use the money because everyone understands money. All right, so there we have it. The total amount that was raised by only males is 46 rand. So for females, again, because we're going to copy, we're going to absolute our ranges, the first one and the second one. All right, then you autofill, right? And in this case, again, we need to come and change to female for, right? So 46 rand was raised. So now you can actually make decisions. That's why we call decision functions, that a lot of money was raised by the girls. We need to encourage the boys to raise more money and so forth, right? So this one needs quite some practice. If I may check some of the chats, if anyone is asking. Okay, there's no question there for now, right? So if we just go back and maybe have a small activity, but you can be asking the questions, it's fine, because this one requires quite some practice. All right, so here's a little activity for us. I made it so simple. Again, I'm just gonna give it 2 minutes. Right, so you need to study where is your criteria in this case. You need to check what exactly do you want to add, and remember the sum if function has got 3 arguments: the range where your criteria is, your actual criteria that you want to look at, and where the numbers are. The last range should be where the numbers are. Like I said earlier on, fastest finger first. Now the fingers are becoming slower. Why? Because the sum if always gives people the creeps. but if you get used to it, it gets better. It gets better with time. Any answer quickly? You can actually write the answer and then just check when we're now going through the actual answer. I see it's taking longer. Well, in an exam setup, this question will probably give you four marks. And remember, each mark is worth a minute, so this will be 4 minutes. But I know you guys are quite smart. That's why I'm giving you 2 minutes. And remember, our time moves so fast. No one yet is yet to respond yet. Are people working on it? Just over a minute. There we have someone. Yeah, Helen is on fire today. B2 to B14, E4, C4 to C14. All right, maybe you just got the absolute reference mixed up, but you are right on track. All right, so let's go straight to our answer. Remember, our time is limited. All right, so there we have. We want to only add up the points for countries in Europe. So our criteria is in B, and our range that we want to add up is in C. So we're just going to go quickly equals sum if. So our criteria is here, highlight there, right? And we want to count if Europe, and Europe is found in E4, right? Then we want to add this up, and there we have it. So it's 154 for euro, right? Remember what yes, I can see V there, some if B2, and he actually typed the Europe in quotes. It's also correct. Yes, it's also correct. This part can be Europe. All right. Now, this you have to really practice, and the activity that I'm going to give at the end of this presentation is going to help you with that. All right. So now let's move on to the simple if, right? All right, so this one is the main function that we really want to talk about even tomorrow for our lesson, right? So what does it do? It allocates a value to a cell according to the result of a condition, right? And it has got the following syntax: equals if the condition that you want, right? The value that you want to be represented in the cell if the condition is true or if the condition is met, right? Then the value false. If the condition is not met, what answer should be in the cell, right? So just as a description, a condition is any expression that can either be true or false. For example, you can either be male or be female, right? It can either be yes or it can either be no, right? So those are some of the conditions that we can put, right? Either this or that, right? So the value of true, this is the value that will be placed if the condition is true. Suppose we ask if such a cell is yes, what value should we have there, right? Then if that condition is not met, then the value that will be presented is, this is the value that will be placed in the cell if the condition is false, right? Now, I'm sure this is the first time you're encountering this function, and I've seen over the years that it gets a little bit confusing for learners. So the best way to do it is to go straight into examples, right? Before we do the activity, let me just go to the example, right? All right, so now I need you to pay attention to how we're going to work this, right? Suppose we, in A2 there, we have a mark, and we want to decide whether this is a pass mark or a fail mark. So the condition that we're going to give that if somebody gets above or gets 50 and above, the result should be a pass. But if it's anything other than that, the result should be fail, right? So we go in our B2, we want the result to be in B2. So we're going to type equals if, that's the name of the function, right? The first part is the logical test, and it's also called the condition. It's easier to remember when you call it a condition, right? So we're saying equals if the value in A2 is greater or equal to 50, right? This is how you write the condition, isn't it? But we're just going to look at it more into detail tomorrow in our lesson. We're just going to dedicate our lesson to the if function. So the first part is if the value in A2 is greater or equal to 50. And when you're creating your logical function, you make use of relational operators. We're just going to talk about that tomorrow as well, like greater or equal to, less than, the inequality signs, right? So this is the first part of the function, the condition. So what should be the result if this condition is met? We're going to say in quotes pass. But if the result is not met, what should be displayed is fail, like that. Right, so as you can see, 48 is less than 50. Hence, the result that is presented there is fail, right? Again, if you change and you put maybe 68, 68 is above 50, so it will be regarded as a pass, right? We try another example there. Suppose we say something is cheap if it's less than 30 rand, or it's expensive if it's more than 30 rand. So again, we're going to go equals if, open bracket, set the condition if the value in cell E2 is greater than 32. Take note, I don't put the R there because currency is regarded as a number. If you put R, then it will recognize that is R32. R32 is not a number, right? Remember, Excel allocates currencies, right? So we're just going to write 32. Again, tomorrow we are going to have a detail to this, right? So that's our first part. So if the value in E2 is greater than 30, this is what we want to display, expensive, right? However, if it's less, we should have, take note, I'm writing words in quotes. That is very, very important, right? So there you have it. 52 is greater than 30, so it's expensive, right? If you put 25 there, it should write cheap, right? Which is exactly what we want, right? I know it might be a bit confusing and you might have a lot of questions, but in tomorrow's lesson, we're just going to look at it into more detail. It's easy to understand, right? Okay. If we move on to the next one, here we have equals if, open bracket. Here we want to check whether a person is a pensioner or not, isn't it? So the status can be either patient, pension, or nothing, right? So equals if, right? The value in I2, let's say a person is a pensioner when they get to 65. It's greater than 65, would state the value to be pension, right? Pension, don't mind my spelling if it's wrong, but if the person is less than 65, we don't want anything to be displayed, so we just put double quotes with nothing inside. All right, if we have it with nothing inside here, all right, because 56 is less than 65, but if you copy going downwards, right, there's a hand raised there. I'll attend to it just now. Let me just finish. Right here, as you can see, 68 is greater than 65, so the words pension will be displayed there. If you scroll going downwards, again 71 is greater than 65, so the person has pension, but 25 is less because we put nothing in between the quotes there. That's why it displays nothing there. All right. Now I understand that this is quite challenging, right? But I just want you to take a screenshot of this activity, right? You try it out. Just take a picture of this activity. You're going to try it out because our time is running out. But like I said, tomorrow we're going to have more of this if. Today was just to like introduce you to the whole thing. But tomorrow we're going to have a good look at it, right? But my time is running out and I always do this. I always run out of time. So just take a picture of this screen. You can create your own spreadsheet quickly and try out the if, right? Any problems that you encounter, remember we need to address this tomorrow in detail, right? As I can see, there is another message there. Let me just check. Say, tomorrow, please start with the work you just did in the 10 minutes because my screen froze. All right, Tato, we're going to do that. Remember, like I said, tomorrow we will have a good look at the if. The whole lesson will be dedicated to this if function. So I hope you have taken the picture of the screen there for this activity. All right. Now, just to recap quickly, what the count if does, it counts a certain number, counts the number of cells that meet a certain criteria. The sum if adds the actual values of certain cells in a range if a certain criterion relating to the data is met, like we did for the grade 10s, grade 11s. Then the if allocates a value in a cell according to the result of a condition. And like I said, guys, remember tomorrow, the whole lesson is about the if. So if there's something that you don't understand, we're going to do it in a much slower pace and so that everyone would understand and would be welcoming we'll be having questions. And those that had screens that froze, please check the video on YouTube. You can go through it on YouTube. I'm sure it will show all the things. But especially for the last part, please make sure you go through the last part because that's the one that we're going to concentrate on tomorrow. I can see Q&K tomorrow same time. Yes, 4 p.m. sharp. We will be there, right? But for the purposes of today, maybe for you to actually understand what we've been trying to do, can you just also take a screenshot of that? I'll put the link so that you can actually have an activity. The first one is a Google Form activity. I would advise you to take this one because it helps you to look at how the if function works. Then this is the small practical activity that you're going to take. So I'm just going to post the links. I see more questions are coming. All right. The link is there on the chat. Let me just put the links for the activities. All right, let me just quickly copy the link for the activities. My screen has just disappeared again. All right, there are our activities. Where is my screen? Sorry. All right, there we have it. Let me just post this on the chat group there. All right, copy. Where's my chat? There's my chat. All right.
Sorry, Bernard, you have to finish off, please.
All right. Can you are you able to just copy the links to the chat? I can't see my chat here. Well, I can't see my chats, but you should be able to copy down this on your YouTube. On the video, when you get to the YouTube video, you can actually pause this part and just copy down the link. It should work. All right. So like I said, tomorrow tomorrow we're gonna have the whole lesson dedicated to the if. All right. So if you don't understand, check in your book, read. Then tomorrow, whatever problems that you'll be facing, we need to have a look at them in detail, right? Most of our time was actually taken by the count if and the sum if, but it was necessary to have a background of how these functions work. But tomorrow, same time, 4 p.m., let's meet here, guys, and let's get this thing going. All right. I think we're done for today. Remember to follow us on social media, #lockdown, and even on YouTube. You can actually just search for Africa Teen Geeks for all the other lessons, physical science, maths. You can find them there on YouTube so that you don't get left behind in this whole lockdown thing. All right, thank you guys. I guess I'll see you tomorrow.